Welcome to the e-commerce growth show, brought to you by Segmentify.
So, hello everyone. This is Carlos again for another episode of the e-commerce growth show by Segmentify with Scott Emmons, and we have here today Brian Lange. So, Brian, Scott will introduce the your bio and a few words about you, but I just want to tell you again that I've been listening to your podcast since 2017, I guess.
Wow, long time listener.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. I used to work a lot for a company called VTEX. It's an e-commerce platform.
Yeah.
Now they're making a splash in the US. They're
They acquired work area.
Yeah, correct.
That was a big deal.
Yeah. And so I work very closely with their founder, Mariano. I don't know if you heard of him. So, I'm more like a marketer, and I needed to understand a lot of the e-commerce world. So your podcast was one of the first ones that I came across. And so it was really interesting. I learned a bunch. So thanks for that.
No, thanks for listening. I'm glad you could put up with me since 2017.
Great, man. So, Scott, maybe you can, open up, introduce Brian.
Of course.
And we get to it.
Yep. All right. Thanks, Carlos. Now that you've established yourself as a true fanboy.
Of course.
So, so Brian Lange, we're happy you joined us today. If you look at, kind of the Brian's history, which I had to dig around a little bit. Usually I can go find like speaker bios and stuff, when I have a guest. And I didn't really find that for you. So I just sort of had to rely on what LinkedIn, had to tell me, right, in terms of history.
Yeah.
So if you look back, to 2012 leading up to today, right, you've done, sort of varying roles that were all very commerce and e-commerce focused.
Oh, yeah.
And you've jumped through, some positions longer than others. I noticed that there was, some decent stretches, with some consulting and, groups that go in and give advice, on, how to be better, at commerce. And then, there were some short stints, like I saw an amazingly short little stint at Amazon.
Good stories there. Yeah. Wait, how much can we edit this afterwards? No.
Yeah. So, but you have been part of the evil empire, at least for a few months,
Yep.
And then you get closer to today, and you've been doing your own very successful and highly regarded and very well rated podcast, Future Commerce. Since 2016, I believe.
Yeah.
So quite a while, and you have where this particular show, our show, is in its infancy. You are yours is a very mature platform with a big following, including Carlos as a fan, and even I met you through your Future Commerce show. I was on the show back in its infancy in 2016.
Yep.
And if anybody wanted to go and review that episode, I probably said a lot of stuff that didn't come true back in 2016. It would be interesting to see. I was in the middle of being Mr. Innovation at Neiman Marcus at the time, and so that's what we talked about. And then I rejoined you in 2019. So I've been on the show twice.
You have, repeat guest. It was great.
Yeah, no, and was happy to do it. I thought it was fun, and that show was entitled "The Modern Consumer Has Trust Issues," which is true. That actually holds up, and actually could tie into some of the research you've done that we're going to talk about.
Definitely.
Today.
Yeah. Before we get to that, though, I'd love to do a little story time. It's funny. You were actually technically our second guest on the show, but you were our first merchant guest on Future Commerce. And I met you.
You hear that, Carlos? His first merchant guest, Carlos.
Right.
It's true.
Yeah.
It was and it was like, it was kind of crazy. I think we actually met, if I recall correctly, we met at the opening event of the first Shop Talk event. First Shop Talk. And
That could very
I
well be. I was a speaker at the first Shop Talk, so I was definitely there.
Yep. And I remember like bumping into you at one of the parties, and I was like, hey, you're like in innovation. I've got a lot of thoughts on this. And I just like hit you with a barrage of ideas, and you're like, this is kind of fun. Like, let's chat more. And that's how I think we ended up getting you on the podcast, which we were just in the process of building at that point. Actually, we hadn't even launched it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was great having you on.
So I was happy to be a part of it, and then we appreciate you coming on and offering some interesting content for our show, as well as we try to get in front of more eyeballs and listen to more sets of ears as we grow this platform.
Sweet.
So, looking at my notes, you want to talk about how you ended up, being a, kind of a pundit? I think it would be fair to say, and you have a partner on the show as well. And if you wanted to, throw in a little bit about your partner and how you guys met and decided to start all this, it'd be great. I think it'd be a good story.
Yeah, it's a good question. So yeah, like you mentioned, we started back in 2016. Philip Jackson, my co-founder, and I had met a few years prior. We were both, consultants for commerce. We had been heavily focused on Magento, which was like the hottest e-commerce platform at the time. Open source was owning the world, and it was like the best and coolest way to get online back then. And so we met, actually, might have told this story one too many times now, but we met in like a backroom poker game in Vegas, and I insulted his card shuffling skills, and we became fast friends. And so, we were both working at competitive consultancies at the time, and but we saw each other regularly at industry events and had been chatting, offline for a while, and just found the conversations that we were having were our favorite conversations we were having in the industry. Philip had already started a very successful podcast, huge following, something in the range of like 100,000 listens a month. And he was excited about the conversations we were having, and it was kind of a no-brainer. It was like, this is a way for us to work out our thoughts. We should do this in public and sort of see what other people have to say about it all. And we were talking about conversational commerce and voice and like things that were really cool back then. Alexa hadn't really taken off at that point, and it was all very, very new, and chat was still kind of in its infancy. And so we eventually we got something going, and it was kind of, the rest was history. We've really evolved a lot since then, though, and I would say about 2 years ago, just over 2 years ago, we really kind of really invested a lot. We rebranded. We launched a whole new set of content offerings, including original research and reports. And so we've been doing, we've done several since we started that. And this report that we're going to talk about today is one of those reports where we've done original research around a topic with partners like Gladly and Stella Connect, who are partners on this project.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So let's jump in. Let's talk about the report. I mean, it's just come out, right? So it's pretty fresh off the presses at this point. we can share in the notes, where you can go to sign up for it. It's pretty easy to get a hold of a copy of it. You just ask for a little bit of, email and, your name and email and title, kind of stuff. And, it looks like you'll send a copy out. And it's entitled Service is the New Storefront, is the name of the report. And, I have to tell you that I actually just saw the report, or managed, to read the report today, because I was reading the wrong report as I was prepping for this interview. No. Yeah, with your, with RightPoint, which is a group you also work with.
Yep.
As well, and I have to tell you, that was an interesting report, but it was not the report you wanted to talk about. So, I said, Carlos, we might need to postpone this so I can take it in. But then I opened it, and I read it, and I said, oh, well, this is, pretty much, I could just rebrand this as to Scott's philosophy of commerce, and it would fit the report.
That's fantastic.
No, it's beautiful, and it's. It actually, I work with a company, PowerFront, and everything that report talks about is what we, are going around telling people, is what's happening, and they need to be better as a result. So I love the topic, and I love that we have the opportunity to deep dive on this with you. So really, there are three major takeaways in the report. Right, three major epiphanies, starting with people need help with a human touch. All right, yes. you want to give us the 10,000-foot overview of how you came to that thought?
Yeah, I mean, I hope it's obvious that the human touch is what really makes the difference between a brand and just a retailer that sells you things, like beyond the transaction. Like anyone can be a transactional these days. You can get up on running on Stripe or whatever platform you want to get up and running on, and you can get your products out there, and you can put up a website on Shopify. Like doing all those things it's actually pretty simple. And even if you've never been involved in commerce, you can create something that's transactional pretty easily. But what really sets a brand apart, and it's not even their own story, it's their relationship with their customer. I think we talk about brand, and often when we think about brand, we think, oh, that's all about us. It's all about who we are. It's all about, what it is that we're doing. But the reality is, and we've been saying this for several years now, your relationship with your customer supersedes any brand story that you have. Your relationship with your customer, like if you can't fulfill on that promise and have a relationship with them, then your brand really, it doesn't mean much. And so the problem with digital commerce and e-commerce is that it seems to have removed this part of the equation for most people. So if you think back to the internet, and when we first got to e-commerce, we're like, oh great, we can put our catalogs up on the on something that everyone can view. And we were like, oh, actually, like scrolling through infinite pages, like probably not the best way to do this. Like we need to organize it all and figure out how it all works. So we built a taxonomy, and we built standard icons, and we built sort of like a general idea that everyone could sort of work through. And ultimately we sort of landed at like a UX that we could all sort of agree on. It was like, okay, we all get how to do this. But then we were like, well, this is all well and good. People can now find products, and we're good at sort of sorting through catalogs online, but it's boring. Like this isn't compelling in any way. And so we became all about the experience. And so we built these beautiful e-commerce websites, and we inserted all of our great content in, and we made it all work together, and content plus commerce and all of that sort of stuff kind of all came together. And then people were like, wow, these are amazing, they're really cool. But the reality is, still missing something that we spent 50 years building up as a retail organization, as a retail industry, which was the connection. to people, people to people. And so, you know, up into the 90s and 2000s, a lot of retail was about how do we build an in-store experience that gives people that opportunity to, to really get to know their sales associates and build connection and clientele and do all those things. But we've completely ignored all that online. And so the next iteration of the web is making sure that there is a human connection. That digital doesn't mean disconnected, disconnection. It means actually better human connection, because we can do it in native ways that we can, and connect people in more meaningful relationship through tools that are common to typical relationships, like texting and chat and switching conversations between mediums, and not forgetting what we said before, and having information that makes sense, and building real relationships, and being able to do this at scale, with technology and with data to back that up. And so that's this next iteration of commerce, and so I think in the process of trying to optimize the web in the past, we've done all of this work to try and make things as slick and frictionless as possible, because that's what is natural to consumers, and like gets them through the funnel as fast as possible, and gets our money in their money in our pocket as early as possible. And we've created all of these like systems to do that. Well, in order to have an actual human connection, perhaps there needs to be moments where we pause, and there is a moment of friction. Not all friction is good, and this is something that we really get into in the report. And I've gone on for a long while here, but I want to give you a chance to
yeah.
Let
me stop you.
The one thing that I want to say is that positive friction versus bad friction is one of the big things that we focus. Good friction versus bad friction, and understanding what that looks like, and understanding what's good and what's bad is a big part of what's the opportunity is here.
Yeah. No, I definitely want to touch on that. I thought that was one of the more interesting areas of the report, was the discussion on friction. But I'm going to back it up for a minute.
Let's do it.
And go back to this treating digital like a treating your e-commerce like a big digital catalog. I think definitely I'm in agreement that that's not the right way to treat your customer. And in fact, I've been saying for some time that digital customers were getting treated like second-class citizens compared to customers walking in the store. And I can use my own past experience with a very prominent retailer, to make that analogy, at least at the time, right? At the time, what an online customer got was not the same as what an in-store customer got. The in-store customer got the relationship thing, and the happy birthday call from their sales associate, and lots of perks and white glove, kind of service that kept bringing them back to the store. Were not adequately replaced by the fact that I got some loyalty points for shopping when I was online, but when I needed to talk to somebody, or I needed help, it wasn't the same the same level available, just because of the way it was executed, right?
Exactly.
In some cases. So if you think about I think you and I agree that essentially the right approach, the commerce is to deliver that same level of service that you get in a face-to-face situation. That's the trick.
Correct.
Yep. So who out there is on the right path? Who's doing this well today?
Yeah, it's a good question. I had a really phenomenal experience with Saucony recently. They did a really nice job of actually being a coach to me as I went to purchase shoes. So actually, I made the purchase ahead of time before I chatted with anyone, because no one right now at this moment is like, oh, when I want to go shop on someone's site, the first thing I'm going to do is chat with somebody. That's not our gut instinct yet. I do think that's coming. But I went on there. So I got a pair of shoes. They didn't fit me quite right. I went to try and exchange them and talk with someone, and someone on the other end gave me incredibly great advice. So I started chatting with them. They're like, I did like the little automated workflow. It was like return process. And they were talking to me about like why are you returning this item? And I was like, yeah, they seem too tight. I think that they're not going to fit. And they said, oh, did you try a half size up? And I was like, well, I've tried half size up on other shoes before. I don't think it's going to work with Saucony. And they're like, yeah. And honestly, and this is the part that I really liked. This is the part that is going to have me back to Saucony again, not too long from now. They said, that shoe is not going to loosen up on you. If it's too tight now, it's going to continue to be too tight. Mm-hmm. And I know this based on experience. And providing that little tidbit to me made me the difference between an unhappy customer and a happy customer, because I knew I needed to return that product. There was no way it was going to end up working for me.
Yeah, they weren't trying to keep talking to keeping a product you weren't going to like.
Right. And I said, well, yeah, I love Saucony. My favorite are Kinvara. I have an older version. I'm going to need to update soon. They're like, yes, when you're ready to update that shoe, you should buy it again, because that's going to be a really good shoe for you. And I will. I'm going to buy another pair of Kinvaras at some point, not too far from now. I can't wait for it. And so it was a really good, where they gave me good advice. The flow on their chat worked really, really well. They connected me with a real person who was actually knowledgeable. To me, that's a huge part of this. Now, that's just one example. There are other great examples out there. I had experience with T-Mobile, where I had the exact same person handle my customer care calls 3 calls in a row. Same person. That was also a really, really phenomenal.
Was that so? You think that was by design? I mean, yeah, that's how their system routed.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah. So they have
customer care. That's really
teams. Cool. It is really cool. They have customer care teams that are dedicated to customers, and if they can get you to the same person, they will. Or at least that's how it was about a year ago. That's when that happened.
So if I just may ask, do you think they have like dedicated squads in that sense?
Yes, in fact, they've made a big deal about that on their website. Like, they have a dedicated team for you. That's your customer care team.
That's really smart.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the insights that we had, and I'm going to have to find the right page here, but it basically said, I think it was, 79% of respondents said that rated it as important or very important that they have a single point of contact empowered to solve my issue. That is to say, like, a consistent point of contact that they can go back to and talk to again. And that's huge. I think if that's if you have the ability to do that, I guarantee you're going to have the ability to turn your customer service channel into a sales channel, because that person's going to be able to start to make recommendations. And that's a big part of the opportunity here is loyalty and sales. Like, instead of looking at service as a cost center, you'll be able to look at service as a revenue driver, which is a totally new, mindset for a lot of e-commerce customer service teams.
And really what you're addressing here is your second takeaway in the report, which is consumers recognize that brand experiences influence brand perceptions, right? That it's
right.
That these things are important, and they're going to contribute to the lifetime value and all the other things that are important to you about about this customer.
Yes. Can I tell a story around this?
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So my dad was a huge, he loved to go find like new wines and interesting wines, and he shopped a ton at Costco. And he shopped at a specific Costco because Costco, there's usually only one that you're close to. You don't end up at another Costco. And so he would go into Costco and he'd spend a lot of money on wine at Costco. And he got to know the wine steward there a lot. In fact, this wine steward would make time for him, significant time, probably more time than he should have, because my dad was a chatter. But it kept my dad coming back. And the net effect was my dad would actually go and make recommendations to a whole bunch of other people who would then go buy the wine that my dad and this wine steward would chat about, to the point where they like exchanged phone numbers, and the wine steward at Costco would actually text my dad tasting notes back and forth with each other.
Yeah.
And they actually developed like a 15 plus year relationship of like wine experience that they would chat back and forth about. And when my dad passed away, the wine steward from Costco came to my dad's funeral.
Wow.
That is so the net effect of that is I am actually a very loyal wine shopper at Costco. And I know a number of other people in my dad's circles, because he was a naturally like community minded person, who also are like, who actually have a relationship with this wine steward at Costco. The brand value there is, and now I'm telling the story on this podcast, and I've told it on ours as well. The brand value of that relationship is like almost limitless in my mind. And I'm a loyal Costco shopper to this day, and I have a huge respect for the brand for that, and for many other reasons. They do so many things right. But the positive customer experience leads to increased revenue is really clear when you're in store, because it's very easy to see what a relationship looks like. Positive customer experience online is a little bit harder for us to quantify right now, and we've done a really bad job of developing real relationships that look like the one that my dad had at the Costco wine steward. And that's what, honestly, so I wrote an article back in 2019 on not all friction is bad. That's where a lot of these thoughts sort of initially came from. And that came through me thinking through this experience that my dad had with Costco, and thinking about what that meant for online. And I think that this is what we're looking for here, is building a real relationship that influences a perception of brand that ultimately results in more sales.
Yeah, it's many faceted. It's a complex relationship a brand has with their customer is what this ends up being, right? It's more than yes, having the right product at the right price is important, but it's just one piece of the important stuff.
It is, yeah. If your customer is on a texting basis with someone that they met through your customer service experience online, and it's a consistent relationship, think about that versus every other customer experience you've ever had with someone online.
Let me return to a statement you made a few minutes ago as we were chatting on chat being important, but not necessarily top of mind for everyone, when they're looking for how to connect to a brand. So what are the important touch points, for today's customer? And is this a battle of the boomers versus the millennials, or the millennials versus someone else that's helping to decide this? Or, what are the factors on how you want to communicate?
Yeah. So I think there's some ones that are consistent across everyone. So here's some things that we found with our report. So we talked about good versus friction versus bad friction, right? And so certain kinds of ways of engagement online are really annoying to customers. If you go download the report, futurecommerce.fm/services, the new storefront, you'll see a chart that sort of like separates the two, like what's good interaction versus what's bad interaction. And if you have to go hunt for answers about a product in an FAQ, nobody likes that. That's a last resort. Like that's that where you're digging the bottom of the barrel, and oftentimes the answer's not even there that you're looking for. So no one likes that. No one likes to have to go to a help section and dig through documentation that's organized in a really business-like format that's not suited for customers, and dig through a bunch of documents and find what they need. The next thing that also like no one really likes, and I recently saw it. I wish I remembered where I saw this, but I think it was in Wall Street Journal. There are two different types of experiences with online chatbots. And the ones that are too presumptuous seem to cause a lot of people heartburn. Also, the ones that stay in an AI experience for too long and people feel like they can't get to a person when they want to also create problems. Everyone expects a little bit of a little bit of maybe automated messaging, but like eventually it gets really frustrating. So that's bad. Those are the bad ones. Email kind of falls right on the line because everyone expects it and everyone knows it's going to happen, and they're fine with it. Then you start to get into like actually good chat experiences, or phone calls or social media interaction. And then yes, I think social media is probably still a little bit generation dependent, although I will say I would say mostly, if you're going to interact with boomers, it's probably going to be on Facebook, maybe Instagram. Mm-hmm. Most of like Gen Z is now like well off of Facebook. In fact, I hardly use Facebook, and I'm a millennial. I know that millennials are even struggling with Facebook right now, and a lot of them have moved off mostly to Instagram, although some are on emerging platforms as well, like TikTok. And then phone seems to continue to be a really strong way to interact with people. People, I think that, there's still a large chunk of people that'll be happy to pick up the phone. There are definitely generational trends, and it's interesting. Millennials actually really hated getting on the phone. Although I think that as they started to age, and it'd be interesting to find data on this, I have a feeling that they're actually coming around to it. But I think phone is one of those things that people, if they are feeling like they need to talk to somebody, that's usually a sign that you're definitely going to want to put someone on the phone with them, because that's, again, like a little bit of like a resort type situation. So you can go check out the report and see where the good friction and the bad friction is. And there's definitely good ways of doing these things and bad ways of doing these things. So I don't want to say, oh yeah, like phone's just going to be a great way to talk to people. Like if you do it in a bad way, it's going to be a miserable experience. You can still create bad friction there.
The other thing to consider, right, is if, from a brand's perspective, I want to be able to have these great conversations, these good friction moments with as many customers as possible. And guess what? Phone is a synchronous operator, can deal with one person at a time. Correct. Method. And online chat and even email, I can handle multiple personal conversations, right? Yep. So I get more bang for my buck out of that, great customer service agent that's really good at what he or she does, as opposed to that, I can deal with one person at a time. Yeah.
Only if you empower them to actually have those conversations, though, and only if those people are actually knowledgeable, because SMS and chat are very easy places to provide a frustrating experience. If the agent's not empowered to actually do anything, then, or doesn't have the right information at their fingertips, or perhaps there was prior customer communication that's not available to that chat or SMS operator, and it feels to the customer like they're starting over from scratch and it's not a continuous conversation, that can end up being a really bad experience. So just because they're scalable doesn't mean that they're necessarily better. They have to have the right tools in place, and to be able to give that good experience.
One of the things I do when I'm testing whether chat is going to be a good experience or not, is I make sure I have a product page up. I make sure I've put, an item in my cart, and I ask questions about the product in the cart, right? I say, does this come in another color? Can you see the item in my cart? For, when they give me if they tell me no, they have no visibility into, any of that stuff, and it's like, okay, so this is the Cro-Magnon version of chat, right?
Yep.
it's going to be disappointing. It's going to be a disappointing experience, and it's going to involve playing 20 questions to get to where we need to be to get my help, to get me the help I need. Number one, and it probably means that the next time I come on and ask for a chat, we get to start all over.
Exactly.
As well, yeah, which is all bad.
That's all bad. Exactly. You know, here's a really interesting stat that I think that there's a few ones I want to throw out from the report that I think will shed additional light on this. 70% of respondents felt that interacting with a CX agent is basically the same as interacting with an in-store salesperson. That is a mind-boggling number, because imagine if in-store salespeople were able to do what you do on chat right now. Like, it would be a really frustrating in-store experience. People would be like, don't ever go to that store. No one is able to help you at all. So that
can you give me the item number?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna have to go check our systems for that information. It's tough. So the other thing that I think was really interesting is 90% of consumers have not engaged with CX before an online purchase. So they actually have no brand interaction from like at least an e-commerce CX experience prior to making that purchase, which I see as a huge opportunity, because if you look at the other data in our report, being able to have that interaction up front is going to significantly increase your odds of increasing sales. And so right now, I talked about how chat wasn't the first interaction point. 90% of people would agree with that. They're not interacting with chat ahead of the purchase. So if you take this sort of into consideration, the opportunity is actually gigantic. So start looking for opportunities. I would say for operators that are listening to this, to me, that's one of the biggest and best places you could be looking for opportunities to improve sales on your site, looking for ways to get people to interact with your CX team.
It's almost like Gen 1 is online interaction was just support, right?
Yes.
It was basically a glorified ticketing interaction, right? As opposed to elevating those agents to be actual sales associates.
Yes.
So turns out, and I preached this when I was on the retail side of things, and it turns out that the customer service group wasn't built in a way that the agents could be successful sales associates. They needed in some cases different people, but in other cases they needed different training. They didn't have the right training necessarily to be sales associates. I guess I'm just, you're preaching to the choir for me, with the things that you just said, I think. So
totally. No, and of course I would expect nothing less from you, Scott.
Well, let's friction has come up over and over again as we've talked today. So give me some examples of bad friction.
Yeah. So bad friction would be things like, you go into a checkout experience, you fill out all of your information, you hit the back button, and everything's gone. So a lot of one-page checkouts. We talk about one-page checkout being this amazing thing, but the problem is you're often putting all of your information in there, and most systems don't have a way to retain that. And then you go back and you come forward again, and it's like, I just filled all of that out. That would be an example of really bad friction in my opinion.
That is a real butt whip. What you just described, actually. And then you talked about the help section and too much, AI. I completely agree that AI is great to sort of help increase the volume of conversations and kind of quick wins you can have, but there always needs to be an exit to a human,
or even a planned a planned move towards human, because like I think that's even better, and that's the experience I had on Saucony. I felt like, I'm pretty sure it was just a chatbot when I first engaged, but it definitely led me to a human. I don't even know when the transition happened. I thought that was interesting. So I think on the good friction side of things, though, stuff like quizzes or information building opt-in opportunities to give, like, and using those as leading click-throughs for your homepage, leading opportunities for engagement. And so instead of having a hero page, you have your quiz as your main opportunity to, like, when you first land on your page, as an opportunity for your customers to say, oh, like, I want to invest in this myself. Like, I want the company to know more about me so that I can get a better experience with them. I think those kinds of opportunities, and you would look at like Care of, who was acquired recently by Bayer. They led with their quiz so that they could give you a better experience with their products, and personalize them for you. I think that's a great opportunity for relationship building, because the customer's saying, oh yeah, I'm opting into giving this information, and I want you to help me. Another good example of this would be very thoughtful opportunities for chat. Not just like some chat bubble that pops up and says live chat, hey, you can chat with us, like, yeah, come chat with us, which happens all the time, and then it makes a blip on my like I've opted into noises on that website. It drives me nuts, actually. But more like, hey, like, I've seen you lingering on this product, do you need help with it? Or, hey, I've seen you've done some searches for this product, can I help you with that? Or, hey, like, maybe when you first join, like, as you go through the quiz that you've entered into, like, you have an opportunity to opt into live chat, and there's logical questions that come in from live chat that are a part of the quiz, things like that.
Yeah, we call that proactive chat. That's and now for a commercial interruption from PowerFront, we do all those things that, the good things that Brian said. Thank you very much. So
nice.
The proactive thing, right? Where you can jump in at the right time, with more than just a how can I help you, with something that is relevant to this customer's journey across their touch points with you. We've seen the conversion rates skyrocket. I mean, they're unbelievable. How much better the conversation gets.
Not to mention like LTV or your CLV. Yeah, because what you're really doing when you get into those chat situations is you're opening up a dialogue, and you're opening up an opportunity to have discourse with your customer. And so, to me, those are invaluable, because it's actually not just you investing in your customer; it's your customer investing in you and telling you information willingly and saying, "Let's have a relationship around something," which can lead to, like, breaking that into a bigger relationship, that something that's going to last for longer than just a single conversion.
I think it means a much bigger investment on your agent side, in terms of making sure that they understand the product line and the nuances of product, right? A lot of customer service agents may not have that intimate knowledge of product, right?
Yes. Investing in this means investing in your employees. Actually, investing in your employees first, like before you do anything else. Investing in your employees and giving them the tools and the freedom and the empowerment to be able to do the things like that wine steward did at Costco for my dad. And take a little extra moment with him, and not necessarily just try to decrease. There's that metric out there, and I'm gonna butcher what everyone calls the common term for it, but decrease your call time, decrease your time to resolution. That actually isn't always the best thing for making a sale and building CLV.
I think you can do both. I think there are methodologies that can be applied that allow you. I mean, look, a retailer is always always a business. So there's always going to be that pressure to do more with less. That's just a fact of life. There'll always be that pressure to do more with less. So what tools can you bring to bear so that when you do more with less, you're not shortchanging your customer experience? Is really that's the balancing act, right? There's the trick.
Yes, or also adding metrics that would help sort of counterbalance that decrease in resolution time. So let's say it's like a customer service reps, like their resolution time might be a little bit higher, but their influence sales were also higher. Like having ways to measure those customer service reps that says, okay, time to resolution is not everything. It's not the only metric by which we say we're being successful. We're going to add different metrics like satisfaction and sales as additional ways of looking. And obviously, a lot of customer service orgs are not only looking at resolution times, but I think there's something there that could be refined, and it's organization dependent as well. And so I agree with you, Scott. I think both can happen, especially when you start to employ good technology to assist with this. And this is where you can actually, again, get rid of bad friction in the customer service interaction. Things like not having the information on hand that you need, or having all the history of the prior conversation that has happened, and then be able to decrease resolution time will increase the connection with the customer. So yeah, I think you're right. Both can happen.
You wrap this report up with 3 statements, with the first one being, I'm going to have to steal for sure, which is digital is not shorthand for dehumanized. Please, thank you. Thank you for saying that. Just because you want to have, offer, a great digital experience doesn't mean that it's all robots and recommendation engines. That's a given.
Totally a given. Absolutely.
Personalization drives satisfaction across channels. And let me go one step further from that, and that is that personalization is not the same as personal. And so I think you have to strive for personal.
I love that. I'm going to go back and edit the report. Personal. Personal is the way to go. I like that word.
You don't necessarily have to do that, but I think that I think a lot of the the marketing folks, they get really good technology and really good at personalization, and somehow the actual personal relationship gets lost in all of that. And then the last takeaway you leave us with is good CX leads to revenue growth and brand affinity, which that's what we're all trying to get to, right?
Right. I think that's, we had one stat, positive CX leads to increased revenue and brand affinity. That was an earlier slide as well. 87% of respondents said they felt that more loyal to a retailer brand if they had a positive CX experience.
I think you have to strive for personal. Somehow I'm echoing here.
That's a very delayed echo.
My voice from the past, like 10 seconds ago. That was
Back
weird.
to the future.
Yeah.
No, it's so true. I think that's the one of the biggest takeaways here is, this is it's both long-term loyalty and more dollars spent. Are you going to see that if you can create these experiences online? One thing that we put into a prior report that we did a research study right in the middle of the pandemic back in July, and one of the big things that we saw coming out of that was just this huge increase to digital purchasing during the pandemic. Like it was such a big swing. It was obviously due for some regression, but some of it's sticking. A good chunk of that is sticky. And we saw during the height of the pandemic, like 50% of online transactions or of sales were coming through online, through digital. Something was crazy. Yeah, they had to. Exactly. That means that if 50% of your transactions are digital, which not all retailers right now out there are going to have that, but that means that digital is your true flagship, probably the biggest flagship you have ever had.
Mm-hmm.
It is the largest way you're going to touch your customers. And in fact, even if people are not making digital purchases, they're being influenced by your site and making purchases in store. And there's some incredible stats out there about that, and more to come on that in future commerce in coming months. But the key here is, if this is your biggest flagship, you should be applying the most money and the best training to your people. You should have the best representation of your brand in digital.
Absolutely. So yeah, we the last episode we recorded was with Jason Goldberg, the retail geek, and he said some very similar things about your digital commerce site being your biggest door, your number one gateway. It was your gateway store, and as someone who was involved in building a huge gateway store in New York City when we were building Hudson Yards, and watch that over 2 years evaporate to its Facebook offices now. Have lived that, right? Have lived that changing of the guard, if you will, and that change of balance to digital really driving a much more important. Playing a much more important role in the business. Now, I know we're getting short on time, and I really gave Carlos no chance to ask anything. Have anything you'd like to ask, Carlos?
Oh, congratulations, guys! It's been like, I'm doing these episodes with Scott, and it's very interesting because I'm Brazilian and I'm based in Denmark, and this one in special, like. It's truly like a North American. I mean, it's a global thing that you guys are talking about, but so I felt that I had no right, and I wouldn't come up with any interesting comments.
Whatever.
So
That's not true.
More like learning. I'm just like sucking into so much knowledge here that is. I really enjoyed listening to you guys. So that's what I wanted to say. But yeah, really, really nice discussion, guys. I think we should do a follow up, because in the report, if I may say something, there's something that you guys talk about. It's not customer service; it's service, right? Being more important now. And if I may ask you, what's changed then? Because in my opinion, service has always been very relevant for everyone here, right? But do you think the pandemics changed, and also the let's say technological landscape? Maybe a question to you both, because Scott has been on that front as well, you too. So I think it's always been important, but are we more prepared now to sort of give that service, or people are more like impatient? What's the take here?
Do you want to take that first, Scott, or you want me to?
I'll let you take it.
All right. So I think you're absolutely right. Service has always been at the forefront. That's why we had such an incredible discipline that we built around service in store for so long. And it's actually, I think digital sort of led us away from that. Is what happened. I think we saw and technology in general, we saw the ability to scale systems and reach more people through technology, and as a result, we sort of got away from it to some degree. Sort of even a little bit pre-internet, we saw that happen as we created mass market brands at further scale and more scale, and made it easier for just anyone to engage in the systems, not necessarily in the selling.
Right.
And so I agree with you that service has always and always will be the leading thing. And so what we're seeing right now is that that we sort of skated by because we still had in store as like the main purchasing channel for retail for so long, even leading up to the pandemic. Most shopping was still done in person. And so I think we sort of leaned on the fact that people were going to come into the store at some point and lost track of the fact that digital is actually the best place to introduce good service up front, and just really hadn't got to a point with technology even really where we had seen like the ability to create good experiences in the way that we needed to lead to some of these outcomes. And so I think we finally got there. Technology, there's a lot of good technology out here that we've kind of mentioned on the call already, that I think will empower the ability to create these experiences, and it's going to be necessary to have that technology in place if you want to provide that sort of best in class experience online. I mean, you can do it in a simple way too, for sure, and just limit your channels. But the bigger you get, I think the more complex it gets. And so you need tools like this to be able to do that. And so technology is kind of caught up. We've also been forced to see that service was just as important online as it was in store.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So futurecommerce.fm, it's chock full of 5 years of episodes of the Future Commerce podcast, as well as many articles of interest. You know, I was reading a couple before the show. I was looking at marketing as a relationship that's till death do us part, that I thought was really interesting. And I was also looking at another one about sacrificial lambs, and, you know, how how early adopters of the technology you were just describing aren't necessarily the big winners, right?
Yep.
Just because I was, first to the doors, I ended up being a learning lesson for for later. And I personally participated in that. So I think we're about out of time at this point. So we're going to say thank you and hope for the opportunity to schedule you on to a future episode, and we can continue the conversation if you're up for it. So thank you.
I'd love that. Thank you for having me, both Scott and Carlos. It's been a true pleasure talking with both of you. Right. And thanks for listening.
Thank you, sir.